you reminded me of a quote. You actually said a 4-word version of it earlier in this episode. But it's been helping me in all areas of my life, and I think you can definitely apply to what you're talking about right now. And it's a quote I came across, and I'm actually memorizing it with our sons right now because cool. I just want to instill this principle in them for anything that they're doing in life. And it comes from Teddy Roosevelt. And you can look it up. You might even know it. It's new to me.
Pretty popular.
It's new to me, but I think you might have come across it already. But it's The Man in the Arena. And I'll go ahead and read it. It's from a speech of his. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither knew victory nor defeat.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
He's a man of letters.
I know, yeah. I don't know if there's a place that it could apply more than
pig killing.
Pig killing.
Yeah, and it reminds me of John Milton in Samson Agonistes, which is this great epic poem. Or it's kind of in the style of a Greek play.
Okay.
Even though Milton was clearly, he's a British Renaissance author, late Renaissance. But he has this line on the voice of Samson, I believe. And I only remember the principle of it, not the exact quote. But it is easier, you can choose easy bondage or strenuous liberty. And the easy thing, is always to do nothing. And the hardest thing is to actually liberate yourself. And it's interesting because I think our notion of freedom, when we confuse it with license, it's like, well, doing what you want to do is easy. And it's like, yeah, that's a very limited view of what freedom actually is. And it's actually quite strenuous. But because you're actually in the arena.
Yeah.
And you're daring greatly.
And you're honing yourself through mistakes. But then that actually opens you up to excellence. It's sharpening you through those mistakes, through those. I mean, not that when you make a mistake, it's you don't want to stay there, but that is precisely how you get better. Yeah,
and I think that if we buffer ourselves too much, and this is why I've always, or part of the reason, something like that, why I've always started with the most rudimentary tool in anything we've endeavored.
That's true, yeah.
Whatever it might be, and you make that the fundamental tool of your process. And for me, it's a sharp knife. There's nothing more rudimentary than a sharp knife. And I eschew a bandsaw, and these mechanized means. And even when I harvest wood and stuff, I've been through that journey. I still split by hand. But there's something about buffering yourself with too much ease that dulls your humanity a little bit.
Yeah,
it dulls the edge of humanity. Whereas it's amazing but in our modern world, you actually have to impose this limitation on yourself as something artificial. Like you have to create an artifice of limitation, because at least in our extraordinarily prosperous society, the limitation isn't real. It's an artifice. It's a conviction rather than a impoverishment.
Yeah.
And so when you take that path in some of these things, it sharpens you, and it's harder. It's not easier.
Yeah.
And you make more mistakes.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
And for me, it only elevates my view of the pigs, because when you take on the burden of killing any animal, any livestock, you are taking on the possibility of making it painful, And I even tell people, like, you can kill pigs in your backyard. It's not easy, but you can do it.
Right.
You're up to it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah.
And it's an encouraging thing, but I don't want to give the impression that it's it's easy.
Well,
Bondage
yeah,
is easy.
I know, right? And I think that's something I wanted to say too. Is
but it is simple.
Yeah. You just don't want to. This is precisely the place to leave the cowboy behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like some things you can just cowboy up and like muddle your way through it, and certainly you do actually want to just start doing this if it's something you want to do. Yeah. But the attitude, I don't know. It's not a place. It's a place a little bit for solemnity. Yeah. And not just cowboyishness.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I always draw a distinction. Like for me, it's not casual, right?
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I feel like the enmity of solemnity is it's not like giddiness or happiness. It is.
Well, it's a sacrifice.
It's callousness and it's casualness.
Okay. Yeah.
It's sweatpants.
That's right.
Whereas solemnity itself is merry.
Okay.
In fact,
True.
a real solemnity is so joyful that it's so much bigger than you that it evokes a joy that is can be as strong as sorrow.
That's true.
Right? Yeah. Not to get way too philosophical about this, but it
can be painful.
That's a little bit of it, And so all of that to say, like when we slaughter a pig, I definitely think that a whiskey toast beforehand is appropriate. But just shooting a pig in the head in the general sense is not. That won't quite cut it, at least for me. Because here's the thing. Especially when you learn how to do this, you are accepting the possibility that the first animals you kill, and again, this could be pigs or anything, are going to be sacrifices to your lack of skill, which means some of them are going to suffer first, while you're learning your technique, while you're getting better at it. And rather than try not to think about that or ignore it or take upon yourself the far too high standard of doing it perfectly the first time and every single time thereafter. You just need to accept that as a matter of humility. That I'm daring this, so I am daring the error. I dare to make error. Yeah. And if anything, that should give you a higher regard for the value of your animals. Because there is a way in which they are participating in your life, not totally against their will. Yeah. Right? You've negotiated with them. In the case of pigs, like, I'm going to feed you inside your electrified fence, and the water's going to go in there too, and you're going to be happy, and you're going to thrive your whole life. And so they are participating insofar as they are able. They are actually willing accomplices to their own death in that way. Insofar as they're capable of that, and I think it is your responsibility as a steward of the life of that animal to have that due regard for its nature, so that when the death comes, or even during its whole life, the rule is not coercion. I'm going to force this round peg into a square hole. I'm going to force this pig into a protein production unit, and then I'm going to take its life. It is actually a negotiation, a relationship, which,
that's a good way of putting
which presumes a little bit, or at least it confers some essential agency to the animal that you are taking. And in that sense, you might be able to say that the animal is giving its life as much as you're taking it.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that is...
as much as they're able.
That is a noble thing. And I think that is not the case if you're forcing the pig, and this is why I like the gun and the rifle. This is just the way it works in my philosophy is I don't want to coerce the pig. And I understand, we have to transport pigs to get USDA slaughter, and that, we have to pick our battles. If you're going to raise pigs well at all and provide people with good meat at all, that's part of it. And of course you do your best to transport, right? You put the trailer in there the night before, and then you feed them breakfast in, and it's very low-key, and they store it in. But if you can, and again, for the backyard slaughter, I like the gun rather than the captive bolt. because I don't have to coerce the pig. I don't have to force it against its nature into a tight area so it'll hold still, so I can place a cold steel object on its forehead, which it's not really going to be that into. I like to be able to stand outside its fence so that its death is uncoerced, right up to the end.
Yeah.
It is drinking water, lights out, or something like that. And I think if we can aspire to that, then we can at least make a pig an icon of self-gift, which, I don't know, that's like the highest thing any terrestrial life form can aspire to.
Yeah.